If I asked you, what is the single most important job of a parent, what would you say? Providing food? Shelter? Academic guidance? I would argue that above all of those things, the most crucial, and often the hardest, task is this: equipping a child to face a tomorrow you yourself cannot control, cannot predict, and cannot stand in the way of.
It is about handing them the tools for a future that will inevitably contain shadows, without letting the fear of those shadows consume the light of today. This was the central challenge in our house, a quiet nightly ritual that spoke volumes about the complex emotional landscape of growing up in this modern, fast-moving world. Every night, after the tuck-in, after the last sip of water, after we had read the requisite pages of whatever dog-eared classic we were currently working through, my daughter Clara would settle in. The lamp would be dimmed to the lowest setting, casting a warm amber glow over the room, the kind of light that makes shadows friendly and walls feel closer, safer. I would pull the quilt up to her chin, a patchwork quilt made by my grandmother, heavy with history and comfort. And every night, without fail, she would look up at me, her eyes wide and thoughtful, and ask the same simple, profound question. "Mom," she would whisper, the sound catching slightly in the quiet air. "Mom, what if tomorrow is scary?" It's a question that catches in your throat, isn't it? Because you want, more than anything, to lie. You want to say, "Tomorrow will be perfect, Clara. Tomorrow is sunshine and ice cream and no bad feelings ever." But the truth, the real truth we carry as adults, is that tomorrow almost certainly holds something scary. A tricky math test, a friend's unexpected sadness, the sudden noise of a passing ambulance, or just the sheer, overwhelming weight of the world we see streaming across the screen. We cannot promise zero fear. Our job is to promise zero loneliness in the face of fear. On this particular evening, the air felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the news cycle I'd inadvertently left on too long that afternoon, or maybe it was the looming specter of the school's annual talent showcase, where Clara had nervously committed to reciting a poem. Whatever the source, the anxiety was palpable. I smoothed her fine, dark hair back from her forehead, my thumb resting gently on her brow bone, and took a slow, deep breath, trying to inhale her worry and exhale peace. "That is a wonderful question, Sweet Pea," I told her, my voice low, pitched just right for bedtime intimacy. "And tonight, I think we need a special story for that specific question. Not a book from the shelf, but a story I keep right here." And I tapped gently on my chest. I shifted to sit properly on the edge of the mattress, the springs protesting softly beneath my weight. I picked up the old, dusty storybook lying next to her, not to read the words, but to use it as a prop, a tangible anchor for the fictional world we were about to enter. I let the book fall open, not focusing on the pages, but letting the worn texture of the paper remind me of the countless nights this ritual had brought us peace. "This is a story about a little girl named Lily," I began, letting the name hang in the air for a moment. Lily was about your age, perhaps just a year older, with bright red boots that she insisted on wearing no matter the weather, and a perfectly normal fear of Tuesdays. But more than Tuesdays, Lily was terrified of the unseen path. I elaborated on Lily's world. Lily lived in a town surrounded by high, beautiful stone walls. Inside the walls, everything was known, predictable, and safe. Her route to the market was the same. Her friends were the same. The sounds of the neighborhood were reliable, like a favorite lullaby. But every morning, when the sun crested the eastern wall, there was a single, grand wrought iron gate that would creak open. This gate led to the unseen path, the path of newness. Lily's greatest challenge was that she was about to start at the Grand Academy of Unseen Doors. This wasn't a school down the street. It was across the rolling hills, past the Whisperwood Forest, and it required her to step through that terrifying wrought iron gate and onto the unseen path for the first time. Lily worried about everything, Clara.
She worried the school bus would look too strange, big and yellow and loud. She worried the new teacher wouldn't understand her quiet jokes. She worried that the benches in the lunch hall would be too long and that there would be no space left for her, leaving her to eat her sandwich all alone near the flickering fluorescent lights.
She worried that the challenges of the new math class, which required complicated things like solving for x, would be too overwhelming, making her feel small and incapable. I paused, allowing Clara to process the specificity of Lily's fears. We know that fear loves detail. The night before she had to walk that path for the very first time, Lily sat at her window, tracing the line of the distant gate with her finger. She was so scared her stomach felt cold, like she'd swallowed a handful of tiny ice cubes. Her mother came in, just like I'm here with you now, and she didn't try to dismiss the fear. Lily's mother knew that fear, when acknowledged, loses some of its sharpness. Lily's mother simply told her, "Tomorrow is going to be big, Lily, and it is perfectly okay to feel small in the face of bigness." But Lily pushed back. "But Mom, how do I go? How do I make my feet move when my chest feels so heavy, like a stone is sitting right inside my ribs? I don't know the way. I don't know the steps. I don't know what is waiting." Lily's mother didn't offer a map, because maps are useless when the terrain is constantly shifting. Instead, she offered the concept of the lighthouse keeper. There was an old woman who lived near the edge of the Whisperwood, Mrs. Eleanor, who spent her life tending not to a lighthouse on the shore, but a philosophical one deep within the forest. She didn't show people the destination. She only taught them how to navigate the immediate step. Lily went to see Mrs. Eleanor the morning before the big school day, wearing her bright red boots and carrying a backpack that felt far too heavy with notebooks and fear. "Mrs." Eleanor was sitting on her porch, tending to a tangled, beautiful rosebush. Her hands were scarred by thorns, but gentle, and her eyes, Lily noticed, were the color of warm, aged leather, eyes that had seen countless scary tomorrows come and go. "Mrs. Eleanor," Lily started, her voice shaking like a leaf caught in a strong breeze. "How do I do something scary? How do I choose to be brave when I just want to stay inside the wall?" Mrs. Eleanor leaned back slowly, setting down her pruning shears. She looked at Lily's nervous red boots. "Ah, bravery," she sighed, a soft, wise sound. "Bravery is perhaps the most misunderstood word we have. Many people think bravery means you stop being scared. They think brave people have smooth, calm chests and perfectly steady hands. But that's not true at all, Lily." She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small, heavy object. It was a brass compass, shiny and old. The glass face was slightly scratched, and the needle inside vibrated constantly. "Look at this compass, child," Mrs. Eleanor instructed. "It is pointing north, always. It knows its purpose. But if I shake my hand, or if the wind blows, or if I drop it on the uneven ground, the needle shakes too, doesn't it? It jitters and spins and looks like it is panicking." Lily leaned closer, watching the small silver needle dance nervously within the casing. It was indeed shaking terribly. "That needle is fear, Lily," Mrs. Eleanor continued. "The shaking, the spinning, that's the panic, the doubt, the wanting to run back to safety. That is natural. The true north, the direction it is desperately trying to point to, even when your hand is shaking, that is your purpose. That is your decision to try. Bravery, Mrs. Eleanor concluded, her voice firm and clear, is simply the decision to look at the compass, notice that the needle is shaking wildly, and try to follow the general direction of north anyway. This was the core lesson, and I slowed down here, leaning in closer to Clara, ensuring she understood the subtle but profound difference. Bravery isn't the absence of the shaking needle. It's the commitment to the direction despite the tremor.
Lily took that lesson back with her. The next morning, when she stood at the wrought iron gate, ready to step onto the unseen path, her stomach was still cold. The needle was shaking so hard she thought the brass casing might burst. But she remembered Mrs. Badger. She just needed to commit to the direction of forward. She stepped onto the path. The bus was indeed loud and yellow and intimidating, but Lily didn't focus on the entire bus. She focused on the next step, lifting her foot onto the first step of the stairwell. One step forward. When she reached the Grand Academy of Unseen Doors, the entrance hall echoed so loudly that it swallowed her hesitant greeting. She saw the long, terrifying lunch benches she had worried about. Her fear needle was vibrating so fast it was a blur. She stood near the wall, ready to retreat. But then she remembered the North. The North in this situation was the desire to learn and the desire to make one friend. She closed her eyes for a quick second. The North in this situation was the desire to learn and the desire to make one friend. She closed her eyes for a quick second, inhaled the strange, dusty smell of the new building, and then opened them and walked toward the nearest empty bench. She didn't try to sit with a group of intimidating, established children. She simply found a single girl, sitting alone, reading a very thick book about birds. Lily approached slowly. She didn't launch into a grand, brave speech. She just used the smallest, quietest, brave step possible. "That looks like a fascinating book," Lily said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Her fear needle was still shaking, but she had aimed it at North. The girl looked up. Her name was Hazel. Hazel had been sitting alone because she was shy too, and had been worried that the benches were too long and everyone else was too loud. Hazel smiled, and the simple act of that smile felt like warmth spreading through Lily's cold stomach. "It is," Hazel replied. "It's about how certain birds navigate without maps, just using instinct." And right there, on the long, intimidating bench, under the flickering lights, Lily realized that the unseen path wasn't necessarily dangerous, it was just unknown. And the unknown was often where the new, necessary people were waiting. Lily didn't suddenly become fearless. When the math teacher asked a question she didn't know the answer to, the fear needle started shaking again. When a girl in the hallway accidentally bumped into her and didn't apologize, making Lily worry she was already disliked, the needle trembled. But every time, Lily stopped, acknowledged the shake, and chose the direction of North. The math problem was solved not by magically knowing the answer, but by choosing to raise her hand, even when it was sweaty, and asking, "Could you please explain the concept of X again?" That small act of vulnerable asking was bravery. The bump in the hallway was overcome not by confronting the girl, but by choosing to find Hazel and say, "I felt a little sad earlier, but I just needed a minute." That choice to share vulnerability was bravery. Lily learned that the most important part of facing a scary tomorrow wasn't preparing for every possible outcome. It was simply preparing her heart to try. Bravery was not the shield she carried, but the decision to step forward with her chest open, even if it meant being exposed. I closed the storybook, resting my hand on the cover. The light in the room remained soft and steady. "And that, Clara," I said, looking into her expectant eyes, "is how Lily handled her scary tomorrow." She didn't stop the shaking of the compass, because that's impossible. She just committed to the direction of effort, the direction of love, and the direction of growth. She decided that trying, even while scared, was always better than sitting perfectly still and missing the opportunity to meet her friend Hazel. I watched Clara's expression transition from focused listener to contemplative child. She didn't ask another question right away. She was internalizing the weight of the compass needle. "But Mom," she finally said, her voice still quiet, but now holding a trace of certainty. "Lily was still alone when she made those choices. What if I feel alone when my tomorrow gets scary?" This was the pivot point. the ultimate reassurance that transcends fictional narrative and grounds us back in the unbreakable reality of parent-child love. That is where our story gets even better, my brave girl, I insisted, leaning down and pressing my forehead gently against her. The scent of her shampoo and the warmth of her skin were immediate, perfect comfort. Lily's mother could not walk the unseen path for Lily, just as I cannot take that swim test for you next week, or stand up on that stage and recite that poem for you. You have to walk your own path, darling. That is how you grow big and strong and capable. But here is my promise. I am not on the path, but I am at the edge of the woods. I am not the one who takes the step, but I am the one who is waiting right here when you return, whether you succeed or whether you fall down and need help dusting yourself off. I took both of her small hands in mine, tracing the lines of her knuckles. If your tomorrow is scary, you come home, and the first thing I will do is listen. I will listen without judgment, even if the fear seems small to me. I will listen to the whole story of the shaking compass. Then I will give you the biggest, deepest, strongest hug this side of the Mississippi River. A hug so secure it feels like the stone walls of home are wrapping around you. And then we will look at the problem together, and we will figure out the very next, smallest, single brave step we need to take. Love, I explained, is the scaffolding. It is the framework that allows you to climb without the fear of falling all the way down, because you know someone is holding the net. My love for her was not a magic spell to dispel fear, but a constant, reliable presence that reduced the risk of attempting new things. Because failure, when you are loved unconditionally, is just information. It's not a verdict on your worth. You are never alone, Clara. Never. When you feel that shiver of fear, that internal tremor, remember the lighthouse keeper. Remember that the shaking is normal, but also remember that your north is always clear. It is always toward growth, always toward kindness, and always toward the effort of trying. And no matter how hard you have to try, or how tired you are when you get home, I am here. I tucked the quilt back around her, ensuring the weight of the fabric felt like a shield. I lingered for a moment, just breathing in the quiet stability of the room. The silence was different now. It was saturated not with anxiety, but with resolved peace. Clara smiled, a slow, sleepy, authentic smile that crinkled the corner of her eyes. The tension had visibly left her shoulders. The story of Lily and the compass needle had done its work. She was no longer facing a terrifying abyss of uncertainty, but a series of small, manageable steps she could choose to take. She snuggled deeper into the pillow, her eyes heavy. She was safe, she was understood, and most importantly, she was equipped. Before she finally drifted off, her voice barely a breath against the comforting silence of the room, she whispered the words that are the ultimate affirmation of a parent's success in that moment. The words that mean the lessons of courage, hope, and love have truly taken root. I think tomorrow will be okay. That's the goal, isn't it? Not to eliminate the struggle, but to instill the quiet, deep certainty that they can handle the struggle, knowing they have an unconditional, safe harbor waiting for them. We are building brave adults, one bedtime story at a time, one promise of a hug at a time. The tomorrow may be unknown, but the presence of love is certain. And that certainty is the strongest foundation we can ever give our children. If you are listening to this and you have those moments, those nightly questions about the scary things lurking in the future, remember Lily and the shaking compass. Acknowledge the fear, commit to the direction of effort, and offer the sanctuary of your love. We are all walking the unseen path together, supporting each other from the edges of the woods. I want to hear your version of the brave tomorrow. What is the promise you rely on when your child asks that difficult question? What is the small, brave step you encourage today? Share your stories and your wisdom in the comments below. Thank you for listening.